Hi. Right now, let's take a moment and introduce you to Inventor. Inventor is one of the design softwares that you can access as a student. You can go to autodesk.com and go to their education link, and you can download pretty much all of their software for free. You just have to register as a student, and you get a 1-year license. And as long as you're a student, you can re-register this each year and get their latest and greatest. Now, let's look at this for a minute. Inventor is a 3D solid modeling software. So as you're looking at it, take a few minutes and figure out what's going on with it. It actually works as a parametric design software. What that means is this. You'll design each individual part, and then what you'll do is you'll assemble those parts. And when you've got them assembled, then you can then put them into presentation drawings, which are things like exploded views or animations. And then you can move from there into technical drawings. This is stuff that you can actually send out for manufacture. This is Autodesk Inventor Pro that you get as a student. I'm looking at the 2019 version right here. This is on my desktop. I use it all the time. I use it in class all the time. And some of the stuff we look at, you'll notice as you look through this list right here, um, these are my files that I've opened recently. I don't have anything pinned right now. I mean, if I literally pinned like that, it'd show up here in the pinned. But what happens is this. I design each individual part, and then I can make an assembly out of it. And with that assembly, I can then make it into a drawing set right there. And you can actually kind of see the flow right here between these four images right here. I do not have a presentation piece put together for it because I really don't need one right here. If I come over here, I've designed another piece right here that is a stackable tray for like acrylic paints. Like I made actually a bottle blank right here to go with it, so I can model it all outright. My son paints miniatures, and I was looking for a way to explain this. So you want to keep paints, inks, and stuff, things on their side so that it doesn't harden in it. So what we did is we set it up so we could 3D model these trays that could be printed. So we modeled them out and figured out a way to have the trays all component, and you just run a dowel through them. And like, here's the dowel, here's the base, here's the trays stacked up for an exploded view, here's the assembly, here's the individual trays, and this is the divider. So you can see the divider right there in that assembly. So what happens is Inventor works this way. Let's open one up. I'm just going to open up a generic part that's just start a new part and walk you through the interface. So as I click on that part, it's going to take a minute. Now, this does sometimes take a minute to load. You got to check the system requirements against your machine that you're using. It's a software and a hardware hog. It does a lot of stuff, and it does a lot of stuff um, that a standard, like, if you buy a bargain computer, it just won't do it. All right. So I've actually changed my background. I don't like the default gray background. It looks pretty crappy to me. It's hard to see parts on it sometimes. I changed my background into a blue background, a presentation background. If you ever want to do that, I'll show you real quick how to do that. Just come over to File, down here to Options, and you can control all your options right here. I literally just went in here to where it says Colors, and I changed mine to Sky. Okay, if I want to go back to the default, which I don't, I can change that. There's also a presentation, which is white, but I'm not a big fan of that either. So my presentation part's here. Now, this is a 3D environment. You'll notice right here is my navigational cube. As I turn this, it'll turn things. Now, there's nothing there to turn yet, so I'm not going to worry about that. Over here is my design tree or my model tree. As I design things, they'll show up over here, so I can literally order features as I go. Like, let me just make a cube for you. It's really pretty easy. I'll start a sketch, and this is how you start all parts, everything. You start with a sketch, and you literally click on a sketch here, and you have to pick a plane to draw on. You can't draw on air, so you have to pick a plane. Well, I'm going to pick on this XYZ plane, this XY plane right here, and just start on it. Now, one thing that I didn't understand when I started modeling like this, I just modeled anywhere, because you can model anywhere. But I try to remember where my origin's at and base most of my stuff off origin. That helps me keep track of things later, especially if I'm doing cylindrical objects. I always want that origin in the center of my cylinders. It makes it really easy if I ever have to go on a plane to divide it or make a flat plane going across it or something. You'll understand that as you get going. But so I'm just going to make, like I said, a cube. So I'm going to right click right here on a rectangle, and I'm going to click and just drag up. Now, it's automatically trying to attach dimensions to this. I'm not going to worry about those right now. I'm just going to click. So there's my cube. Now, if I push my mouse wheel down and drag, I can move that around and pan around it. It stays attached to this origin, but if I want to control things, and I want to be a little more controlling, say I want a 1" by 1" cube. I went up to the dimension, I clicked on it, clicked on the line I want to dimension, and just tell it to be 1". Okay, now that's 1" wide. Okay, I just zoomed out a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing going vertically. So I click on the line, drag it out, click where I want to place the dimension. Then it pops up this edit dimension, D1. I'm just going to type in 1, enter. That is a 1" by 1" square right now. There's nothing else going on with it. Now, if I want to make it a cube, I then have to finish the sketch because sketches are 2-dimensional by definition. You can do 3-dimensional, but I don't do that with beginners. So I'm going to finish my sketch right here, and it kicks it to an isometric view for me. Okay. Now you'll notice my cube up here tipped, so I got my right side showing my front. You can actually see my top. Well, all that's done is rotate it, so when I try to extrude this or revolve it or whatever operation I'm going to do to it next, I can see it. So as you're looking at this, let's look at some of these tools. Extrude literally stretches. Think Play-Doh and the forms, and you stick a Play-Doh in, you squish it, comes out in the shape you want. Most of us had that as kids. You've got a revolve, which literally takes an axis and spins the shape around. So I draw a profile and I can spin it around that. A sweep, I have to have a center line for it to follow. So I set up a shape, then I set up a line. And this is how I do like tubes and things, piping, stuff like that, hose cords, etc. I set up a center line and I can tell the shape to follow that center line and make a very complex shape. A loft, I use this for, actually I use it for rotor blades when I do submarines, and like my kids at school sometimes take part in the sea perch contests, and we design our own completely. Um, we basically took their ideas of what we were doing a few years ago, and we said, okay, how can we improve this? How can we improve proficiency of the prop on our boat, the screw? And so we start messing around with those, and that's what a loft can do. You can make really complex shapes with it. Coils are great for springs. I use them for threads when I want to be able to print a thread, that kind of stuff. Embossing literally does what it says it does. It embosses on the surface. Derive, we really don't use it much, but it does, it drives apart from other parts. Okay. Ribs we don't use much right now, neither do we use decals and import. I don't usually bring stuff in with the beginners, so we'll worry about that later. So I'm just going to hit the extrude button right here. There's only one shape available to me, so it's going to find it. It defaults to wherever it last was, and on the first thing it does, it is 1". So I've got a 1" cube right here. I say, okay, I'm good with that. I can tell it to go a different direction if I want it to. It goes backwards or forwards. I can tell it to split the distance. I can also tell it to go asymmetrical. I'm just going to leave it forward. Now, these buttons right here, if you hover over them, you'll find out they do some other things. Like if I had a different shape here and I was compounding, I could do a cut through this, and I'll show you that in just a moment. I can also do an additive, subtracts, but we're only going to worry about cuts and extrudes right now. So when I hit this, I'm going to hit the OK, and it's going to make a cube. One thing I do want to point before we leave, it will taper. Let me put a 15-degree taper on this scene, so what I'm talking about. It'll actually basically make what is a loft, but a loft that is completely symmetrical to the shape. It's 15 degrees all the time. So lofts don't have to be that. So I'm going to take that back to the default 0 and go OK. So there he is. That's what I've got set up for my cube, and it's cake to make. If I want to make a new sketch, I can sketch on any flat plane I have now, or I can come back over to my origin and pick one of the other planes if I need to. So that's where it comes in handy with cylinders and things. For right now, I'm just going to pick a plane like this plane, and let's say I want to put a hole through this. I'm just going to put a notch in it. I'm going to draw with lines a shape that comes up and just kind of makes a trapezoidal shape. Okay, and I'm going to tell that to be a cut through. Now, the only reason I'm doing a trapezoidal is so that, see, lines, as long as it closes, it'll do it. So I'm going to do it. There's my shape coming out. I'm going to tell it to be a cut right here. And it's going to cut 1" back through that part, which is all the way through it. So I've just made a cut through my part. Now, if I just click on this, I can rotate around. I can pan. If I push my shift key down and push my mouse wheel down, I can 3D orbit. I don't like to do that a lot because of things, it gets everything wonky. I don't like wonky. If I want to turn a plane flat to me, I can just click on this button right here and then pick the plane I want flat. Like say I wanted to have this plane in here flat to me, I can go, okay, let's turn this up a little bit. I want to go completely flat to say this plane that's a trapezoidal plane. There, now it's truly flat to me. I can draw right on it. I can see what's really there. those are the things that we can do with this, and it makes our lives really, really easy. And that's what Inventor really does. So later on, you'll get into it more and more, and we'll see some other things, but this is just the intro. So enjoy.